Hello everybody, this is video 3 of 3 discussing the way developmental psychologists orient to studying the human being. Every different sub area of psychology, and there are many, take a different view and a different focus. What I want you to do is to think for yourself. I want you to think about what we learn is and how it might be the same or different than what you thought was the way people develop across time and the way people are in these ways, and compare and contrast. And I want you to think about how what we learn fits with you and your age and your stage. Okay, and keep an open mind, as we've already talked about. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, there's a very important principle called the Epigenetic Principle that I want you to be well aware of. This refers to the biological unfolding that allows each human being to function fully. And this emergence of functioning is very systematic. It's driven by biology and genetics, right? So you can see what the brain and other parts of the body are coming online to be utilized, and then what we want is an environment where that part is developed fully. And it does take the entire lifespan to fully develop and to fully expose all the possibilities for that person in those skills. So what we know now is that, for example, genes, part of our, not G-E-A-N-S, but G-E-N-E-S, come on or off. They're turned on or off as they're needed by the developing human being, by the body itself, by the brain and everything else. And sometimes those openings are triggered by the environment. See? So the entire lifespan, as I said, is required for this. It doesn't start and stop at any particular moment, although the openings and closings early on are more frequent and more substantial in terms of basic skills, like language, for example, is open only for a certain length of time and then it closes. The brain is plastic. It's open to receive language, both internalizing it, understanding it, and expressing it, and everything else connected with that. So the brain is open to that, but long about 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, the brain begins to shut down its plasticity, its ability to do those things with language. And so the person is likely to never have full use of those abilities in language. Both gains and losses are integrated into the next stage of life. So if you gained all the things you needed to gain, all the genes that were supposed to come on, and you fully develop those as you interact with your environment, which is in the beginning mostly your family and so forth and so on. As you move on, it's outwardly from that. Then good things happen. You're ready to then jump into the next stage. It's not a moment, it's a process of time, years in each case, of acquiring all the other things as they open. But the opposite is also true. If you have losses in one stage, you don't, like the language thing, then in the next stage, in the teenage years, if you didn't get all the language parts, it makes other things in the next stage really difficult. Some, if not all, and at least some, it'd be very difficult to learn, you see. Okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, the epigenetic principle. Now, switching gears a little bit, I want you to understand that the world population was not at 1 billion people, until around 1820, 1810. Think about that for a minute. The entire world's population was not at 1 billion until slightly after 1800. And then in the 200 to 300, 200 years beyond that, or so, 20, skyrocket. Human population has exploded, and as you know, the science is very clear that has a very dramatic impact on resources. It has a dramatic impact on inequalities in terms of economic and social well-being. It has had enormous impacts on the environment. And if this continues, we will outpace the ability of the Earth to provide for us, and we may very well sink our population on Earth with our environmental destruction and pollution and so on, and the raising of the temperature. Greenland just is in the process now of having reached the tip-over point in losing its ice sheet. The largest ice sheet that it has is now, huge ice sheets are now melting in Antarctica. And it's happening faster than they actually predicted. But they predicted it. It's happening faster. It's not a question of whether it's happening. It's about what are we going to do about it? It's not a political course. I'm just telling you the realities of the science. So now we have about 7 billion people on Earth. And it's very dramatically increasing. All right. So we have some developmental stages. There's a cartoon in your PowerPoint that tells you some funny things about how that looks like in terms of the transportation methods that you use. At first, you're in a little buggy, and then at the end, you're in a wheelchair. But it's just kind of funny to watch that. I like that one. So Erik Erikson came up with these stages, and originally he had 8 stages. He had infancy, toddlerhood, early childhood, middle school age, adolescence, early adulthood, middle age, and the aging years. But as time has progressed, specific ages associated with specific stages are not precisely aligned. There's movement forward or backward. Some people are ahead, some people are behind. So if you say emerging adulthood is 24, 25 to 35, if you say, well, okay, so that doesn't account for everybody, does it? Yeah. We are very much like flowers as we move through the stages. We either remain a bud or we begin to flower and show our color in our petals as we interact with the world and develop all our capabilities. So what we're going to study is the prenatal section, which wasn't part of Erikson. When he developed all this, we had not as much information about genetics. The human genome was deciphered not after he was dead. Well, shortly before, but it didn't enter his theory much. So we'll cover prenatal. Then the first 3 years, okay, toddlerhood basically, and then early childhood 3 to 5, middle childhood 6 to 12 about, adolescence early, which is about 13 to 21, and later adulthood. If you separate it out, then adolescence would be 13 to 18, and then 18 to 22 to 24, somewhere in there. If you just took adolescence, it's to about 13 to about 12, or 13 to about 21, 22, something like that. Depends on what author you read. It depends on what textbook you're using. It depends on what writer you're listening to. It depends on what theorist you're talking about. I prefer to do it in 2 stages, and I think you're going to see why. Okay, I think you'll see the wisdom in doing it that way, I hope. And then young or emerging adulthood, that's 21, 22, 23 to the early to mid 30s. And then middle adulthood, which is early 30s to 60. And then later adulthood is about, we're going to do that in 2 stages too, 60 to 75 and 75 old older. He didn't have but one later years because we didn't have a lot of research on the people who are over 75 because people are living a lot longer now than they were. Did you know that in 1900 the average lifespan was 49 in the United States? In other places, to this very day, it remains even in the 30s. A lot of that has to do with wealth disparity, food shortages, and so on, wars, things that suppress the lifespan, diseases. Okay, and then death and bereavement was going to be combined into that. So the last section will be 60 and over, 75 and over to death. And we'll talk about what death really is and what it isn't and the need for it to be comfortable within ourselves about it. Okay. So each stage is characterized by an underlying set of organizations biologically and psychologically. And each, according to the Epigenetic Principle, each stage has a number of things that open up a certain time in a certain order. It's not haphazard, and it's in order. It's not you get one up here and then you get one back there. No, it's in order. And we progress through these stages based on how we progress through is based on our success in one or another, and lack of success in one or another. Okay. So that's the last of it, and of the introductory material. And this weekend I will, or before, give you the rest of it. So that's 3 videos. Watch these. Good on you. Bye.